You know, it's been a privilege this year to serve on E12. I haven't been on it in a few years since my days in the other body that shall not be named. And I have to tell you that it was a learning curve. But it was good and it was exciting. And it just kind of confirmed some of the myriad problems we see happening in the higher ed budget as well. And, you know, I heard a lot of passionate rhetoric about how wrong I was, maybe even insinuating that I'm morally deficient for not offering this bill. I don't think that was intended, but it's kind of what I heard. And I want to go ahead and quote Luke Skywalker from The Last Jedi. He said, and this is directed towards Senator Chamberlain, when I heard you talking about this amendment initially, I would quote him in saying, amazing, every word of what you said was just wrong. And I'm going to spend the next so many minutes walking you through why that is. I mean, you may be puzzled why I would use a Luke Skywalker quote, but I'd like to hope that somebody out there that's listening to us doesn't think we're completely stuffy. And the reality is that I hear from you, Senator Chamberlain, I hear from my friends across the aisle in my district, I hear from my friends across the aisle in the Senate, on this never-ending march against public education, against our teachers, against, and I quote, government schools, like that's some sort of negative connotation. I hear this rhetoric about being angry with how they're deficient, how they're not providing, you don't think they're doing very well. Well, Senator Chamberlain, I would argue that you're part of the problem. But I'm not going to just focus on you being part of the problem. I'm going to say everybody in this room is a part of the problem. And everybody that's been in this room for the last 10 years. And everybody that's been in the other body for the last 10 years. This bill does not meet the needs of public education. I have watched the GOP target not only public education or government schools, and our teachers and the teacher union that works so hard on their behalf over and over again. They desecrate them, they bring them down, they talk about them being part of the problem. I hear that in committee about how the unions are running things and it's a real problem. And what's funny to me about this is that you have a union that's designed to protect our teachers. Why would they need that? Why would they need protection? Why is it that when we offer amendments and things to the floor, the 58,000 teachers in our state support us and not you? After all, they are the experts. There is nobody on the front line that's more of an expert about education than our teachers. And what's been really amazing since I've been doing distance learning with my kids because of COVID is I've gotten to know a few of them in the public schools in Mounds View. And I watch the work they do, and it's amazing. Their attentiveness, having to do it online, and getting to know my son and my other son and being part of their lives as a part that my kids talk about, even though we're doing it online, in a system that 2 years ago was not even dreamt of, and now executing it in a way that my kids are not only doing well, but advancing. That's amazing. To be told to teach in a way that's pedagogically different than anything we've seen in the last 30 years, and then to pull it off with almost no notice and a lack of funding, that's amazing. So when you talk about quote unquote government schools, I want to be clear, you're really talking about the 58,000 teachers out there who have dedicated their life for not a lot of pay to make this world a better place. You're really talking about the 800,000 public school kids out there that are in these places that you demonize, that I think are continuing to provide for one of the reasons why Minnesota is so amazing. You may express umbrage and dismay with those 58,000 teachers, but sir, I would keep that focused here because neither of us are on their level in what they do. So stay in their lane with us here. I have many faults. You want to come at me about that, that's fine. Go after my teachers and we're going to have a problem. But there is a reason beyond politics that our front line doesn't support the policies coming out of the GOP on a regular basis. As the experts, they know what's going on in the classroom, and we continually give them less and ask them to do more in a world that's becoming increasingly more complicated. Increasingly more complicated. So let's talk about how this bill falls short of meeting the needs just to break even in Minnesota. First of all, and I'll commend this, and I'm not supposed to commend the opponent's bills as much, but you did talk about teachers of color and you put some money in there. I think you even kind of matched in a different way what the governor asked for. Sadly, it's not close to what's needed to actually solve the problem, but it's a nudge in the right direction. So it falls short on that front. Where else does it fall short? Let's talk about the cross-subsidy. Right now, we're at about a $900 per pupil gap of what's needed and what we're spending. We fall short there for our kids in needs. That's a problem. We fall short. But do you realize the big way we fall short? Do you know how much, if we adjust for inflation, since 2003, just this biennium we're short? $500 million. $529 million. We're not spending on every school and every pupil in our state just to keep up with inflation. Let's be clear about this. $529 million that aren't being spent to take care of our schools that I hear from your party all the time are failing our students. I think you're beginning to see the argument I'm about to sketch, but let me walk you through it just in case you're not. If you think about that $529 million as a one-time thing, that's a problem. We can overcome that. The problem is it systemic? It isn't just $529 million this year, this biennium. It's $450 million 2 bienniums ago. It's $250 million 4 bienniums ago. We're talking not millions, sir. We're talking billions with a B short. When you look at the cumulative effect of how we've underfunded our schools for the last 18 years, it's cumulative. And as much as I would love to place it all on your shoulders, Senator Chamberlain, I can't. And I said this in committee, and I'll say it here now. My party has something blamed for this as well. When we had the majority, we didn't do what was necessary either. But when you look at the budgets, consistently, my party is asked to spend more on education as a part of our budget than my friends across the aisle, consistently. So let's go back and look at this cumulative effect. What does it mean when we don't fund those things? What is the resulting effect in our education system? And Mr. President, I assure you this wraps right back to the vouchers. Just give me a second. So what does it mean when we say it doesn't take care of, or we're not funding our system correctly? Not just $529 million right now, but hundreds of million dollars every biennium we fall short. Well, let's talk about what we've brought upon ourselves. We have effectively eliminated in the last 20 years career and technical education. We have a couple bright spots, but effectively it's not there. I grew up with a shop class, a home ec class, a metal manufacturing class. We had small engine repair as an option. I loved home ec. I made a really great shark pillow. It was awesome, right? I loved shop. I made a little cookie cutting board for my parents. It looked like a little pig. It was really neat. But the reality is we don't have those options now. Kids aren't getting that. And that failure has led to an actual correlation with the amount of manufacturing and skilled jobs we have in Minnesota that we're not filling because we don't have the kids coming through the pipeline. This is the first and probably one of the biggest, most obvious errors of something we need to fix. Our economy lags because we didn't have career and technical education because we cut funding and we added a ridiculous amount of tests. That has really done one thing. It's made Pearson Publishing rich. That's what it's done. It hasn't improved our schools, right? We're making teachers teach the test rather than teaching the content. That's not good. We started at an early age, and if you talk to Senator Kunish, the experience is pretty traumatizing overall for students, not to mention the teachers have to put it on. It's ridiculous, and it's just a time suck out of the day when we could spend our time actually talking about things that matter. So we have effectively eliminated career and technical education. What else have we done? We have increased class sizes. That's not helpful. As a teacher myself, I can tell you there's a big difference between 25 and 32, and there's a big difference between 18 and 25. Now, I'm at the college level, a little different, right? At the same time, though, that experience fundamentally changes the experience of teaching, and the already limited face time each student gets with the teacher now gets less. And that face time is crucial to the success of the student, which I hear from you is the number one priority you have in education, yet we're not backing that up. We have put teachers in an absolutely untenable place, and I'm not even talking about the demonizing I hear about teachers. I hear about LIFO, I hear about Education Minnesota, which I will unapologetically support, if that's what the school district wants. I'm talking about the daily experience of being a teacher. Did you know that there are as many teachers with teaching degrees not teaching in Minnesota than there are teaching? Think about that. Wonder why they're not teaching. I can tell you why. A simple Google search will tell you that. Because the experience is a nightmare. And how much they're paid is atrocious. And how successful they can be there versus doing other things doesn't match. And people have real bills and real lives. And being put in a spot where I have to do a job that you may find soulful and important, but not putting your family in a position to be successful causes you have to look elsewhere. We have a teacher shortage when it comes to teachers of color, no question, but we don't have a teacher shortage, folks. That's not the problem. We have a not paying them what they're worth shortage problem. That's the problem. We're not paying them what they're worth. Not only that, but I know and have talked to oodles and oodles of teachers, which is the number I'm pretty sure, that have said, I'm paying for things out of my own pocket just to make sure my classroom runs the way I need it to. Think about that. I have teachers who are already underpaid, overstressed, overworked, and given way too many responsibilities and not nearly enough support, and we haven't even talked about mental health yet. And not only that, but they're taking what little money they have and they're putting it into their classrooms. That's shameful. I heard you talk about shameful. That's shameful. We have cut programs beyond CTE, programs whether it's athletics, arts, music, the things that kind of make us human that are really important and give us a lot of chance to express ourselves, learn so many important things you can't go out and get in the classroom, and we cut those out. School districts have been put in impossible spots and having to cut every single time, every single biennium. It's ridiculous. It's painful. And it hurts our kids. And as a father who's got 3 kids, 2 of which in public schools, next year I'll have all 3, thank the Lord Jesus, I'll have all 3 kids in public schools, what are we doing? It concerns me. And I'm in a pretty good school district. Mounds View is pretty good, right? What are people doing that are not in such great school districts? And more than that, you know, I recognize that there's a place of privilege where we're in. I get to work from home. My wife gets to work from home. I'm helping them with the things they need so I can be there for my kids. What are parents doing that don't have that options and they may not be in a school district that's great? Yeah, this COVID pandemic has exacerbated that to some degree. But the fact of the matter is, these program cuts and opportunities, not counting the COVID crisis, are detrimental to the overall well-being and the opportunity those students have. Finally, and perhaps maybe even more profoundly, we have failed so fundamentally on mental health. We have, just in Mounds View alone, the suicides have been deafening and terrifying and horrific. And we're not the only school district that's dealing with that. And we have done nothing. I mean, we've done a little, but nothing that actually takes a sizable bite and makes this better by putting trained counselors in the school to help this. We have not put us where we need to be when it comes to taking care of our kids, not just in the classroom, but their mental well-being. Do you know what's weird as a parent? When you have kids at home, and then you realize that from the time they turn 6 on, a third of their life is going to be spent away from you in a school with other adults and other kids. Every day from that point on, a third of their life is going to be spent someplace else. And let me tell you, that's kind of scary. And then when I hear the numbers about bullying, and I hear the numbers about the mental health issues with depression, drug use, all the kind of things that may happen in those situations, people are not in a good place, and I worry about them. I know, I've heard Senator Chamberlain was worried about them too, and I believe he is worried about them. He's talked about it. Yet, here's the deal, we're not taking care of them. We're not giving them what they need. Folks, $529 million short just this biennium, hundreds of millions, over $1 billion, $2 billion short over the last just 10 years. I didn't even count from 2003 to 2010. Let's take a step back and talk about what that means when we take money away from public schools. Let's take a step back and talk about what that means for our state. And I want to go big picture. I'm going to go a little meta on you here. You know, in the past, you've heard me talk about U.S. News and World Report and the way they rank states. I think it's fascinating. And they've got all these little metrics they use. And once again, Minnesota came in second. And I saw really great articles in the New York Times about how that was baloney. We should have been first. I happen to agree. Why is that? Is it because the fishing's so amazing? Maybe a little bit. Well, am I interrupting them, Mr. Chair? I'm sorry. Is it because their fishing is amazing? No, although I like the fishing. Is it because we have good winter sports and downhill skiing and cross country and the environment's so great? That could play a role, but I've got a theory. My theory is this. Over 100 years ago, we made a commitment to educate our people, and educate them we did, and that's why our state is so amazing. When it comes to Fortune 500 companies per capita, when it comes to nonprofit and civic engagement, when it comes to charitable giving, when it comes to getting out the vote and voter turnout, things that require you to be engaged and to care, and on some level be educated, whether it's a wonderful high school education or secondary or wherever or into college. But there's trouble brewing in those numbers, folks. When you look at how we rank educationally against other states, we're dropping. We used to be in the top 10, now we're 17. And 17 is nothing to sneeze at. But I don't like the idea that I'm behind North Carolina in education. I certainly don't like the idea that I'm behind Wisconsin in education. I don't like that at all. But more importantly, I don't like the trend I see developing when it comes to career and technical education, when it comes to how we treat our teachers, how we're spending money in our schools, when it comes to the opportunities for our kids. I don't like that trend. So let me wrap this back up. This bill, according to my understanding, takes $250 million and it puts it toward private schools. So let's juxtapose those two concepts for a second. I just talked about the way we're failing and underfunding our schools, and I see this bill goes even further to that. Rather than help solve the problem, now we're going to spend more money elsewhere on private schools, when we haven't even met our obligation for public schools. We're not even close to meeting our obligation, much less going forward beyond just what's needed. You know, I teach an interpersonal communication course. You've heard me talk about this in the past. And in my lecture, there's something I talk about. When we talk about awareness and self-awareness and how do you know who you are? And my students are always like, you know, that's kind of a Zen philosophical question. I said there's actually a really easy way to figure out who you are. Take a journal and write down, what have you done the most over the last 30 days that's not eating, sleeping? Just those two things. What are the top 10 things you do? Why do I say that? Because you are what you consistently do. What has the legislature consistently done? Our values are reflected by our actions and where we spend our resources. The legislature has continually said that. So when I hear Senator Chamberlain say that he loves and champions public schools, Senator Chamberlain, apologize, that he champions public schools, but his actions don't measure up to that, that makes me go, I'm not sure how that works. Folks, what this bill does is puts the money back where it needs to be. Now, I'm sure we're going to get into a nice argument here about some of the details and get lost in some of the numbers. But the bottom line is, Senator Chamberlain and the GOP Senate is taking money out of public schools and putting them into private schools. Period. That's it. That's what vouchers do. We can spin it any way we want. That's the end result. And when that happens, we fail our schools yet again. There's a good reason why this isn't in the House and the governor would never sign it. If you want to have the discussion, I'm all about that. But this bill fails on every mark it can in terms of providing what's needed for schools. And I want to go for one more thing. I hear my Republican friends say, well, we don't have the money. We can't just manufacture money. We can't just make money. Let's talk about our value statement. Not that long ago, we did a $500 million tax cut for corporations. What we said in that moment with our behavior was corporate tax cuts are more important than our kids, period. That's what we said. Corporate tax cuts are more important than our kids. Ironically, I think Senator Chamberlain was the chair of taxes back then. I think that's an important point. So I'm really frustrated when I hear us talking about bills like this that has horrible garbage language like this in it. And let's just touch on one more thing about vouchers. I heard Senator Chamberlain make a very passionate plea about how getting rid of this gets rid of choice for students. And this research is pretty clear that it doesn't. Public schools are the priority in our state, not private. You tell me how bad public schools are, yet you contribute to the problem of why they're not doing so well when you don't fund them. And then you wonder why, in shock and awe, how could this be? We need to try something else. If we adequately funded our schools, if we took care of our teachers and provided for the opportunities they have, we wouldn't be in this spot. I find it a bit disingenuous when I hear the continual rhetoric against public schools when you are part of the reason why they're not doing well, according to you. You're a part of the reason because you continue to underfund them. It's disingenuous to make the argument they're doing bad when you had a part in why they're doing bad. So I'm frustrated. I'm looking forward to what I hope is a robust debate, and I hope many Republican senators want to engage me on this, because I'd love to have this discussion all day long. Thank you. Please vote green. I'd like a roll call.
All right, members.